Captain Ji-hoon Park stood on the bridge of the Harmony's Dawn and watched the stars beyond the viewport. He had been doing this job for 20 years now. 20 years of smiling, bowing, and accepting insults from species that thought humans were weak. 20 years of following orders that told him to stand down, to wait, to be patient. He was tired. The communication panel beeped. Lieutenant Hin looked up from his station with worried eyes. "Captain, we're receiving another distress signal. It's from the mining station at Sector 7. They're under attack." Ji-hoon felt his jaw tighten. "The Vethric again?" "Yes, sir. 3 of their warships. The station only has civilian vessels. They're asking for immediate assistance." Ji-hoon wanted to give the order. He wanted to jump to that sector and drive those reptilian bastards away from innocent people. But he knew what would happen. Send the report to Ambassador Han and the Galactic Council. Tell the station to evacuate if they can. Hyan's hands shook as he sent the message. "Sir, the station says they can't evacuate fast enough. The Vethric are jamming their launch systems. They're trapped." "I know, Lieutenant. Send the report." Ji-hoon had joined Earth's diplomatic fleet because he believed in peace. When humanity first reached the stars 103 years ago, they had fought brutal wars with the first aliens they met. Thousands died on both sides. But then the Galactic Council found them and offered a different path. "Join us," they said. "Be peaceful. Show the galaxy that new species can be civilized." And humanity agreed. They were tired of war. They had spent their entire history fighting each other. Space was supposed to be different dots, so Earth dismantled its warships. They turned weapons factories into research centers. They sent diplomats instead of soldiers. And for a century it worked. Humanity became known as the peaceful species, the mediators, the ones who always chose dialogue over violence. Other species respected that. Most of them anyway, but the Vethric Dominion saw something else. They saw weakness. They saw prey. The attack started small 2 years ago. A human cargo ship disappeared near Vethric space. Then another. The council investigated and found nothing. The Vethric said pirates were responsible. Everyone nodded and moved on. Then Vethric ships started crossing into human territory. They claimed navigation errors. The council urged patience. Humanity waited. 6 months ago, the Vethric attacked their first colony, a small research outpost with 200 scientists. They killed everyone and took all the supplies. Ambassador Min-ji-han brought the evidence to the council. She showed them recordings, wreckage analysis, and survivor testimonies from a nearby station. The council looked at everything and said they needed more time to investigate. They urged both sides to show restraint. Restraint. That word burned in Ji-hoon's mind like acid. How much restraint did those scientists show when they were slaughtered? How much restraint did the miners in Sector 7 have while Vethric warships tore their station apart? Dr. Yoonji Choi entered the bridge carrying a datapad. She was the ship's xenobiologist and cultural expert. She believed in the mission more than anyone. "Captain, I've been analyzing the Vethric attack patterns. I think I might understand what they're doing." "They're testing us," Ji-hoon said flatly. "They want to see how far they can push before we push back." Eunji nodded sadly. "Yes, in their culture, a species that doesn't defend itself has no right to exist. They think we're weak because we choose peace. To them, that's not admirable. It's pathetic. And the council? The council has many species. Most of them avoided major wars by joining early and accepting the rules. They don't understand species like the Vethric or humanity. They've forgotten what it's like to fight for survival." Another beep from the communication panel. Hyan looked like he might be sick. "Captain, the mining station has gone silent. All signals lost." Ji-hoon closed his eyes. More deaths. More innocent people killed while he floated in space doing nothing. Added to the report. How many does that make? 12 incidents, sir. If we count individual deaths, we're at 4,318 confirmed casualties. 4,000. Ji-hoon thought about his own family back on Earth. His sister lived on New Jeju, one of the agricultural colonies near the border. He messaged her every week and told her everything was fine. The council was handling it. Humanity's peaceful approach would win out. But he didn't believe it anymore. He wasn't sure he ever really did. Ambassador Minji Han contacted the ship later that day. Her face on the screen looked exhausted. She had been beautiful once, Ji-hoon remembered. Now she looked 20 years older than she was. Captain Park, I need you to attend the council session tomorrow. I want them to see a military officer. I want them to hear from someone on the front lines. Will it help? Probably not. But we have to try. The council chamber was enormous, a sphere of polished crystal that floated in space above the planet Nexera Prime, representatives from 40 species. Sut in sections arranged by seniority. Humanity's section was near the back. New members always were. Ji-hoon wore his full dress uniform. He hadn't worn it in 5 years. It still fit, but it felt strange. Like wearing a costume. Ambassador Han presented the evidence again. She showed recordings of the attacks. She displayed the names and faces of the dead. She explained how the Vethric were violating every treaty and agreement. She spoke for 2 hours. The council listened politely. When she finished, the head counselor, a tall being made of crystalline light, spoke in a voice like chimes. We hear Earth's concerns. These incidents are indeed troubling. However, we must be certain of the facts before taking action. The Vethric Dominion is a powerful member of this council. We cannot accuse them without absolute proof. We urge humanity to continue showing the patience that has defined your species. More investigation is needed. Ji-hoon felt something break inside him. Patience, investigation, the same words they always used. He looked at Ambassador Han. She nodded slightly. He stood up. I am Captain Ji-hoon Park. I command a diplomatic vessel at the border. I have watched 12 of these incidents happen. I have listened to people die because my orders are to wait and observe. How many more need to die before you consider the proof absolute? How many? The chamber fell silent. No one spoke to the council like that. The crystalline being dimmed slightly. Captain, we understand your frustration. But peace requires sacrifice. Humanity has been an excellent example of restraint. Continue to be that example. That night, Ji-hoon couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the word sacrifice. Whose sacrifice? The people dying weren't council members. They were humans. They were miners and farmers and scientists who thought the galaxy was safe because the council said so. The alert came 3 days later. The Vethric had attacked New Jeju, his sister's colony. Not a small raid this time. A full assault. 40 ships. Orbital bombardment. 40,000 people lived there, past tense. By the time the report reached the Harmony's dawn, there was nothing left but burning fields and silent cities. Ji-hoon read his sister's name on the casualty list. Song-mi Park, age 34. Agricultural engineer, dead. The Vethric commander sent a message. They broadcast it across all channels so everyone could hear. The reptilian face filled every screen. This is what happens to weak species. Your council protects you with words. Words mean nothing. Strength is all that matters. Thank you for the easy victory, humans. We'll take the rest of your colonies whenever we wish. Ambassador Han called an emergency council session. They gathered again in the crystal chamber. The councilors offered condolences. They said New Jeju was a tragedy. They promised swift investigation and strong words for the Vethric. Strong words. While 40,000 humans turned to ash, the council offered strong words. Ambassador Han stood in humanity's section. She looked at each counselor in turn. Then she spoke clearly. Humanity withdraws from the Galactic Council effective immediately. All treaties are void. All agreements are terminated. We came here believing in peace. We gave you 103 years. We tried it your way. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The crystalline being flashed bright. Ambassador Han, you cannot simply withdraw. There are procedures, negotiations, transitional periods. No, Han said simply. We're done negotiating. We tried peace. For a century we tried. Now you'll meet the other side of humanity. She walked out. Ji-hoon followed her. Behind them, the council descended into chaos. But Ji-hoon didn't look back. He had new orders waiting. All human ships were being recalled. All diplomatic missions were ending. And for the first time in 103 years, Earth was preparing for war. The peaceful century was over. The message reached every human vessel in the galaxy at the same time. 3 words: come home now. Captain Ji-hoon Park stood on the bridge of the Harmony's Dawn and watched as similar messages appeared on every screen. All diplomatic ships, science vessels, cargo haulers, and research stations received the same order. No explanations. No delays. Just come home. Lieutenant Haeun Kim looked confused. Sir, what's happening? Are we abandoning our posts? We're following orders, Lieutenant. Set course for Mars? Mars? Not Earth? Mars, Ji-hoon confirmed. He knew what waited there. Every captain did, though they never spoke about it. There were stories, whispers shared in quiet moments between officers who had served long enough. Stories about facilities on Mars that didn't appear on any public registry. Stories about ships that were built but never launched. Stories about humans who never really forgot how to make war. Dr. Yoonji Choi appeared at his shoulder. Captain, I'm receiving messages from alien colleagues. They're asking what's happening. The scientific community is worried. They think humanity is making a terrible mistake. They can think what they want. We tried it their way. The journey to Mars took 2 weeks. During that time, the galactic news networks exploded with speculation. Some said humanity was retreating in fear. Others claimed it was a negotiating tactic. The Vethric Dominion sent mocking broadcasts. They called humans cowards who ran at the first sign of real conflict. Their commander, the same one who destroyed New Jeju, promised to hunt down every human colony and erase humanity from the galaxy. He said it would be easy sport. When the Harmony's Dawn entered Mars orbit, Ji-hoon finally understood what 103 years of peace really meant. The orbital space around Mars was crowded with human vessels. Thousands of them. Diplomatic ships, science vessels, merchant craft, all arriving from across the galaxy. But that wasn't what made him stare. Behind Mars, hidden from casual sensors by the planet's magnetic field and debris, floated a fleet. A real fleet. Warships like nothing humanity had shown the galaxy. They were dark and angular, built for function instead of beauty. No elegant curves or decorative elements, just armor, weapons, and engines. Hundreds of them. Maybe thousands. My God, Haeun whispered. Where did these come from? We built them, said a new voice. Admiral Sang-woo Kang appeared on the communications screen. He was old, maybe 70, with gray hair and scars on his hands. While the galaxy watched us dismantle our weapons, we built these. While they praised our peaceful nature, we prepared for this day. We hoped it would never come. But we're not stupid enough to bet our survival on hope alone. Ji-hoon felt something stir in his chest. Not quite pride. Not quite fear. Something else. Orders, Admiral? Bring your ship to Dock Station 12. The Harmony's Dawn will be converted back to her original specifications. Her real name is the Righteous Fury. She's a battlecruiser, Captain. One of the first we built. We disguised her as a diplomatic vessel, but underneath all that pretty hull plating is a warship. You're going to command her properly now. Over the next 3 days, Ji-hoon watched the transformation. Work crews swarmed over his ship. They stripped away the elegant exterior, the comfortable quarters, the conference rooms designed for hosting alien dignitaries. Underneath was a skeleton of weapons hardpoints, armor plating, and military-grade systems. The Harmony's Dawn had been a mask. The Righteous Fury was the truth. On Earth, Minister Ji-won Lee addressed the planetary government. The speech was broadcast across all human channels. Ji-hoon watched it from the station commissary while his ship was being rebuilt. Minister Lee was a small woman with hard eyes. She looked directly into the camera. 103 years ago, we made a choice. We decided to try peace. We joined the Galactic Council and followed their rules. We gave up our weapons and embraced diplomacy. But we're not fools. We know what the universe is. We know what other species can become. So while we practice peace, we also remembered war. She gestured to a display showing human history. Ancient battles, medieval sieges, world wars, nuclear stockpiles. This is who we were. Thousands of years of fighting each other. We nearly destroyed ourselves a dozen times. We know war better than any species in the galaxy because we perfected it against ourselves. When we reached the stars, we hoped we could leave that behind. We tried. We really tried. The display changed to show the Vethric attacks, the destroyed colonies, the casualty lists, but the galaxy didn't want our peace. They wanted to test us. They wanted to see if our restraint was really weakness. The Vethric Dominion has shown us that peaceful species are considered prey. The Galactic Council has shown us that justice only exists when backed by strength. So now we'll show them what humanity really is. Minister Lee's expression didn't change. We're not the peaceful philosophers they thought we were. We're survivors. And survivors don't become peaceful by forgetting violence. They become peaceful by learning it too well and choosing differently. The galaxy forced us to remember. What happens next is their fault, not ours. The broadcast ended. Around Ji-hoon, other officers sat in silence. Finally, someone spoke. It was Captain Narration, a Special Forces commander he'd met once before. She was small and quiet, the kind of person you'd overlook in a crowd. That was why she was perfect for her job. They're going to learn, she said softly. The Vethric think they know war. They don't. They know honor combat, formal challenges, ritual fighting. They're about to learn what real war looks like. The kind humans invented. How long have you been preparing? Ji-hoon asked. Since the beginning. Some of us never stopped being soldiers. We just wore different uniforms. She smiled, and it was not a kind expression. Do you know what humanity's greatest advantage is? It's not our technology or our numbers. It's our memory. We remember every war we ever fought. Every tactic. Every strategy. Every horrible, efficient way to kill an enemy. The galaxy forgot how to fight. We never did. We just pretended. The Vethric made their move 5 days later. While humanity was still recalling its ships and revealing its fleet, the Vethric Dominion launched a massive offensive. 300 warships crossed into human territory at multiple points. They expected scattered resistance from whatever defense forces humanity had hidden. They expected an easy conquest. They broadcast their invasion plans openly, mocking human weakness. They were about to receive an education. Admiral Sang Wukong stood in the command center on Mars and watched the enemy fleet advance. Around him, dozens of officers monitored screens showing every aspect of the invasion. The Vethric were moving in standard formation, their ships arranged for maximum firepower and mutual support. It was textbook military strategy, the kind taught at academies, the kind that worked when your enemy fought by the same rules. Activate the defense grid, Admiral Kong ordered. What the Vethric didn't know was that humanity had spent a century fortifying their territory. While building diplomatic stations and research outposts, they'd also seeded space with weapons platforms, sensor networks, and automated defenses. All hidden, all waiting for activation. All designed using principles from human history. The first Vethric ships hit minefields, deployed using submarine warfare tactics. Invisible until triggered, the mines tore through shields and hull plating. The formations broke apart as ships tried to evade. Then the human fleet appeared, not charging in for glorious battle, not forming up for honorable combat. They came from everywhere at once. Ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel inside the Vethric formations, fired and jumped away before return fire could track them. It was chaos. It was efficiency. It was war the way humans understood it. Commander Do-Yun Shin led a squadron of stealth frigates. His ships were dark and silent, running on minimal power signatures. They'd been hiding in the debris fields of destroyed asteroids for 2 days, waiting. The Vethric fleet passed right by them, confident in their sensors and superiority. Doyon gave the signal. His ships powered up and fired at point-blank range into the Vethric rearguard. Engines exploded. Ships spun out of control. Before the enemy could respond, Doyon's squadron went dark again and drifted away among the debris. The Vethric fired at empty space, hitting their own ships in the confusion. On the Righteous Fury, Jehun coordinated with 5 other battlecruisers. They weren't trying to destroy the enemy fleet. That would take too long. Instead, they targeted supply ships, communication vessels, and command units. Cut off the head. Poison the supply lines. Force them to fight blind and hungry. Tactics from Earth's ancient wars, applied to space combat. Lieutenant Hyun Kim worked his station with fierce concentration. Sir, enemy flagship is requesting formal combat protocols. They want to arrange a proper battle. Ji-hoon almost laughed. Tell them we don't do proper battles. This is war, not a tournament. The fighting lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Vethric invasion force had lost 70 ships. They retreated in disorder, dragging their damaged vessels away from human space. Humanity lost 12 ships. The galaxy watched in shock. The peaceful species had just humiliated the Dominion's military in their first real engagement. The Vethric couldn't understand what happened. Their tactics had worked against every other species. Their ships were powerful. Their warriors were trained and eager. But humans didn't fight the way others did. There was no honor, no glory, no mutual respect between warriors. Just efficient, brutal, terrifying violence aimed at destroying the enemy as quickly as possible. Ambassador Min Ji-han, no longer an ambassador but now serving as humanity's spokesperson, released a statement. For 103 years, we tried to show you our better nature. We tried to be what you wanted us to be. You mistook our choice for inability. You thought we were weak? We're not weak. We're dangerous. We've always been dangerous. We just chose not to be. Now you've made that choice for us. Captain Narayun's Special Forces teams were already moving. While the main fleets fought, her units infiltrated Vethric supply bases. They sabotaged equipment, planted false intelligence, and disappeared like ghosts. The Vethric had never encountered anything like them. Other species had soldiers. Humanity had soldiers and assassins and saboteurs and 1,000 other specialists in violence. Ji-hoon stood on the bridge of the Righteous Fury and looked at his reflection in the dark viewport. He'd been a diplomat yesterday. Today he was a warrior. Tomorrow he'd be whatever humanity needed him to be. That was the truth the galaxy hadn't understood. Humans didn't have one nature. They had many. And now the galaxy would meet all of them. 3 months after the first battle, the Vethric Dominion still didn't understand what they were fighting. Commander Doyon Shin watched from his stealth frigate Silent Vengeance as another enemy supply convoy moved through space. They had escorts this time. They were learning, but not fast enough. Target their sensor ships first, Doyon ordered quietly. His crew worked in silence, every member trained in the art of submarine warfare adapted for space. Move slowly. Stay cold. Wait for the perfect moment. These were lessons from Earth's oceans, now applied to the void between stars. The Silent Vengeance and her sister ships drifted like debris. Their hulls were coated in materials that absorbed sensor waves. Their power signatures mimicked background radiation. To the Vethric, they were invisible. Ghosts in the darkness. When the convoy was in optimal position, Doyon gave the signal. 4 frigates fired simultaneously. The Vethric sensor ships exploded. Without their eyes, the convoy was blind. Before they could react, the human ships fired again. Supply vessels carrying fuel and ammunition erupted in brilliant fireballs. The escorts fired wildly, hitting empty space and occasionally each other. Go dark, Doyon commanded. His ship powered down to minimal function. They drifted away while the Vethric searched for an enemy they couldn't find. An hour later, long after the Silent Vengeance had repositioned, the Vethric gave up and fled with what remained of their convoy. Less than half made it back to base. This was happening across 17 star systems. Humanity's war wasn't one big battle. It was 1,000 small cuts, each one weakening the enemy. Supply lines destroyed. Communication networks jammed. Commanders assassinated by special forces that appeared from nowhere and vanished like smoke. The Vethric had no defense against enemies who refused to fight honorably on the righteous fury. Captain Ji-hoon Park studied reports from all fronts. Chief Engineer Minho Cho stood beside him, pointing at various tactical displays. Minho was young but brilliant, the kind of person who thought about weapons the way artists thought about paint. The Vethric shields are strong against energy weapons, Minho explained, but they're designed to stop direct hits from ships they can see. So we're not using energy weapons anymore. We're using kinetic projectiles accelerated to extreme speeds. Simple metal slugs moving fast enough to punch through anything. Technology from human history, back when we shot bullets at each other. Ji-hoon nodded. And the psychological warfare? Working better than expected, sir. We're broadcasting recordings of their casualties on all frequencies. Death screams, distress calls, the sounds of ships breaking apart. Their warriors are getting scared. They're making mistakes. Fear is a weapon, just like anything else. It was true. The Vethric considered themselves superior warriors. They trained for glory and honor. But humans had spent thousands of years learning that war wasn't glorious. It was horror. And if you wanted to win, you used every tool available, including the enemy's fear. Colonel Sorobik led the Marine boarding actions. She was tall for a woman, with scarred hands and cold eyes. Her team specialized in taking enemy vessels intact. Not for honor, not for glory, but because captured ships provided intelligence, resources, and psychological impact. The boarding pods were ugly things. Cylindrical shells filled with Marines and launched like missiles at enemy vessels. They crashed into hulls and burned through armor plating. Then the Marines poured out, moving through alien corridors with practiced efficiency. Sora led the assault on a Vethric cruiser personally. Her team wore powered armor that made them stronger and faster. They carried weapons designed for close combat in zero gravity. The Vethric crew tried to resist, but they'd never trained for fighting inside their own ships. Their tactics were designed for honor duels and space battles. Not for humans clearing rooms one by one, using grenades and automatic weapons and ruthless determination. Within 30 minutes, the cruiser was secured. The surviving Vethric were detained. Their computer systems were stripped of data. Their weapons were catalogued. And then, before abandoning the ship, Sora's team planted a gift. Explosive charges set on delayed timers hidden in places the Vethric wouldn't think to check. When they towed the damaged cruiser back to their own fleet for repairs, it would explode during the refit process. More fear, more confusion, more evidence that humans fought without rules. The Vethric commanders demanded to know why humanity fought this way. They sent messages asking for formal engagements, proper battles where warriors could prove their worth. Captain Ji-hoon received one such message from the Vethric admiral leading their fleet. The reptilian face filled his screen, scales gleaming in harsh light. Human commander, your tactics are dishonorable. You hide and strike from shadows. You target the helpless. You show no respect for warrior traditions. Face us in open battle if you have any courage. Ji-hoon took his time responding. When he did, his voice was flat and emotionless. Admiral, your people killed 40,000 civilians on New Jeju. You bombed farms and homes. You murdered children. You don't get to lecture us about honor. This is war. Real war, not your pretend version. We tried peace for 100 years. You laughed at us. Now you're learning why we preferred peace. He cut the connection without waiting for a response. Behind him, Lieutenant Hyun Kim looked troubled. Sir, do you think we're going too far? Some of the tactics we're using, they seem cruel. Ji-hoon turned to face his young officer. Lieutenant, do you remember New Jeju? Yes, sir. That was cruel. This is justice. The Vethric wanted war. They got it. Not the war they expected, but war doesn't care about expectations. It cares about results. And our results are keeping human colonies safe. Specialist Jinho Nam worked in a different kind of battlefield. His weapons were code and data. While the fleets fought in space, Junho fought in the digital networks that controlled everything. The Vethric relied heavily on automated systems. Their ships, stations, and bases all connected to central computer networks. It made them efficient. It also made them vulnerable. Junho sat in a dark room surrounded by screens, his fingers dancing across haptic keyboards. He wasn't alone. Dozens of cyber warfare specialists worked alongside him, each one targeting different aspects of Vethric infrastructure. They'd spent months studying captured systems and analyzing enemy code. Now they were ready to attack. The operation began at midnight, synchronized across all fronts. Human viruses infiltrated Vethric networks through 1,000 different entry points. Some came through captured equipment returned to Vethric bases. Some arrived hidden in normal communication traffic. Some were physically implanted by special forces teams. The results were devastating. Vethric weapon systems shut down mid-battle. Life support failed on ships far from help. Navigation computers provided false data, sending vessels into asteroid fields or stellar hazards. And the Vethric couldn't fix it because every time they purged the viruses, new ones appeared. It was like fighting smoke. Captain Nari Yoon stood in a briefing room and presented the results to Admiral Sang Wukong. Our psychological assessment indicates the Vethric are nearing a breaking point. They've lost 40% of their fleet. Their supply lines are collapsing. Their warriors are afraid to sleep because they don't know when humans will strike next. Their leadership is arguing among themselves about how to respond. Admiral Kong nodded slowly. He was old and tired, but his mind was still sharp. And civilian casualties? Minimal on both sides, sir. We're targeting military assets exclusively. The Vethric have tried to retaliate against our colonies, but our defense grids are holding. They can't break through. Good, we're not monsters. We're just better at war than they are. The turning point came at the Battle of Kepler Station. The Vethric committed their reserve fleet, 150 ships led by their finest commanders. They thought overwhelming force would finally break human resistance. They were wrong. Admiral Kong deployed a strategy from Earth's ancient history called defense in depth. Instead of meeting the Vethric head-on, human forces fell back gradually, drawing the enemy deeper into prepared positions. Each retreat was planned. Each fallback led the Vethric into another trap. Minefields took their toll. Ambush from hidden positions destroyed escort ships. Long-range missile barrages forced the Vethric to spread their formations. And all the while, Commander Doyun's stealth frigates picked off stragglers and supply vessels. When the Vethric finally reached Kepler Station, they found it abandoned. The station itself was a trap filled with explosives and automated weapons. When the enemy fleet moved in to investigate, everything detonated. 23 Vethric ships were destroyed instantly. The rest scattered in panic. That's when the main human fleet appeared. They jumped in from 3 directions simultaneously, cutting off escape routes. The battle that followed wasn't honorable or glorious. It was mechanical slaughter. Human ships coordinated their attacks with perfect timing, focusing fire on one enemy vessel at a time until it was destroyed, then moving to the next target. No wasted shots. No dramatic gestures. Just efficient killing. The Vethric fleet broke. Some ships tried to surrender, but humanity hadn't decided on surrender terms yet. So the broken vessels fled, dragging damaged hulls back to Vethric space. Of the 150 ships that entered the battle, only 41 escaped. It was the worst military defeat in Vethric history. Across the galaxy, other species watched in horror and fascination. The peaceful humans weren't peaceful at all. They were terrifying. Their war wasn't noble or exciting. It was brutal efficiency applied to the problem of killing enemies and staying alive. They used tactics that other species considered dishonorable or cowardly. But those tactics worked. Dr. Yoongi Choi, still serving aboard the Righteous Fury, tried to explain it to her alien contacts. They didn't understand how humans could fight this way. She sent them history files, recordings of Earth's ancient wars. The world wars, nuclear weapons, trench warfare, carpet bombing, submarine attacks, chemical weapons, all the horrors humanity had inflicted on itself. This is what we are, she told them. We're not naturally peaceful. We learned peace because we got too good at war. We almost destroyed ourselves a dozen times. When we reached the stars, we hoped we could be better. We tried. But survival comes first, always, and we're very, very good at surviving. Lieutenant Hyun Kim asked Captain Ji-hoon a question that many humans were thinking. Sir, when the war is over, can we go back to being peaceful? Ji-hoon didn't answer right away. He looked out at the stars, at the debris of destroyed ships, at the evidence of humanity's efficiency in violence. Finally, he spoke. I don't know, Lieutenant. I really don't know. But I hope so. Because if we can't, then the Vethric won even if we defeat them. They'll have turned us back into the monsters we used to be. But first the war had to be won. And humanity was just getting started. 6 months into the war, the Galactic Council finally realized what they had created. The crystalline being who led the council contacted Fleet Admiral Taeyeon Ro personally. Admiral Ro was the supreme commander of all human military forces now, a position that hadn't existed for over a century. He was a big man with gray hair and the kind of eyes that had seen too much death. The council leader's image appeared on the communication screen in Admiral Ro's office. The crystalline being glowed softly, its light patterns expressing concern. Admiral, we must speak about ending this conflict. The violence has gone too far. Both sides have suffered losses. Surely peace talks can begin. Admiral Ro leaned back in his chair. He didn't speak immediately. He just looked at the council leader for a long moment. When he finally responded, his voice was quiet but hard as steel. Where were you when the Vethric killed 40,000 civilians? Where were your peace talks then? We were investigating, gathering evidence, following proper procedures. Admiral Ro repeated the words like they tasted bad. You know what humanity's proper procedure is? When someone attacks us, we destroy them. When someone kills our people, we make them regret it. That's the procedure we followed for 10,000 years before we met you. We tried your way. It didn't work. So now we're doing it our way. But the casualties, the destruction, this isn't the humanity we knew? No, Admiral Ro agreed. The humanity you knew was pretending. We were trying to be better than we were. But you wouldn't let us. The Vethric wouldn't let us. You all kept pushing until we had to show you what we really are. This is your fault, not ours. The council leader's light flickered with what might have been fear. The Vethric have agreed to negotiate. They're willing to discuss terms. Surely humanity can show mercy. Mercy? Admiral Ro stood up and walked to the window of his office. Outside, ships moved through space like schools of metal fish. Let me tell you about mercy. When the Vethric attacked New Jeju, did they show mercy? When they laughed at our peace offerings, was that merciful? When they called us weak and promised to erase us from the galaxy, was that mercy? No, they showed us what they were. Now we're showing them what we are. And we're not done yet. He turned back to face the screen. Tell the Vethric we'll accept their surrender, unconditional, complete, total. They disarm their fleet. They submit to human oversight. They pay reparations. They face justice for their crimes. Those are our terms. If they refuse, we'll continue until they can't refuse anymore. The council leader tried to argue, but Admiral Ro cut the connection. He had work to do. Humanity was preparing to reveal weapons they'd hoped never to use. But the Vethric needed to understand. This wasn't a regular war. This was an extinction-level threat response. And humans were very good at survival. Captain Yuna Jang sat in the cockpit of her fighter and watched the countdown timer. She was young, only 26, but she'd trained her whole life for this moment. Her fighter was small and fast, built around a single weapon system. An antimatter missile. Antimatter was the most dangerous substance in the universe. When it touched regular matter, both annihilated each other completely, converting all their mass into pure energy. It was clean, efficient, and absolutely devastating. Humanity had developed antimatter weapons decades ago, but never used them. They'd been considered too dangerous, too final. But the Vethric had built a massive battle station at the edge of their territory. Intelligence said it was being prepared for an assault on Earth itself. The battle station had to be destroyed. Conventional weapons would take days to crack its defenses. Antimatter would take seconds. Yuna's squadron consisted of 20 fighters. Each one carried a single antimatter missile. Their mission was simple: penetrate the station's defenses and deliver their payload. Simple, but not easy. The station was protected by hundreds of defensive platforms, thousands of automated turrets, and 2 full Vethric battle fleets. All units. "This is Command," Admiral Rowe's voice came through Yuna's headset. "You are authorized to engage. Show them what human ingenuity looks like." "Good luck." Yuna pushed her fighter to maximum acceleration. Around her, the squadron formed up in a loose pattern. They didn't fly in formation. That would make them too easy to target. Instead, they moved like a swarm, each pilot choosing their own path. Unpredictable and chaotic. The Vethric defenses opened fire. Energy beams and projectiles filled space. 3 fighters exploded immediately. 2 more took heavy damage and had to abort. But the rest pushed through, dodging and weaving with computer-assisted reflexes. Yuna's hands danced across the controls. Her fighter spun and rolled. Barely avoiding a beam that would have vaporized her, the defensive platforms tried to predict human movements. But humans didn't move predictably. They moved with controlled chaos, patterns that looked random but were actually calculated to maximize survival. It was a technique developed by fighter pilots in Earth's ancient wars. Now adapted for space combat, Yuna broke through the first defense layer. Ahead, the battle station loomed huge and dark. Its weapons tracked her fighter. She armed her missile and locked onto the target. Around her, other pilots did the same. 15 fighters had made it through. 15 antimatter missiles. More than enough. "Fire on my mark," Yuna called out. 3, 2, 1, mark. 15 missiles launched simultaneously. The Vethric tried to intercept them, but antimatter missiles didn't care about point defense. The moment they were hit, they detonated. And when antimatter detonates, everything nearby dies. The battle station vanished in a flash of light brighter than a star. The energy release was so massive, it created an electromagnetic pulse that shut down every system within 1,000 kilometers. The Vethric fleets went dark. Ships drifted helpless, their crews trying desperately to restart systems. Yuna pulled her fighter away at maximum speed, but even so, the shockwave caught her. Her cockpit systems flickered and died. For 30 seconds, she drifted blind through space, not knowing if she'd survived. Then backup power kicked in. Her screens lit up. She was alive. "All units report," she called out. 8 voices responded. 8 fighters out of 20. 12 pilots dead. But the mission was successful. The battle station was gone. The Vethric fleets were crippled. And the galaxy had just learned that humanity possessed weapons that could erase entire installations in seconds. While the antimatter strikes made the news, Specialist Junho Nam and his cyber warfare teams were conducting a different kind of attack. They'd spent months infiltrating every level of Vethric digital infrastructure. Now they activated what they called the Cascade Protocol. Every computer system in Vethric space began to fail simultaneously. Not violently, just stopped working. Ships lost navigation. Stations lost life support. Military networks went silent. Communication systems displayed error messages. Financial records vanished. Government databases corrupted. Everything the Vethric civilization relied on simply stopped functioning. Junho watched the results on his screens. It was beautiful in a terrible way. An entire interstellar civilization brought to its knees by code. No explosions. No casualties. Just silence where there used to be communication, darkness where there used to be light. "Sir, we're receiving surrender requests," one of his team members reported. Multiple Vethric commanders are asking for help restoring their systems. They're offering to negotiate any terms we want? Forward the request to Admiral Rowe, Juno said quietly. And keep the cascade running until we receive orders to stop. They need to understand. They attacked our civilization? We're showing them what happens when you make humanity defend itself. The Cascade Protocol was based on something called mutually assured destruction. During Earth's nuclear age, nations had enough weapons to destroy the world many times over. No one used them because everyone would die. The Cascade Protocol was similar. Humanity could destroy the Vethric completely, erase their entire technological civilization. And the Vethric finally understood that. Admiral Taeyun Ro stood in the command center and watched reports come in from every front. The Vethric were collapsing. Their military was broken. Their infrastructure was failing. Their leadership was in chaos. Some Vethric commanders were trying to surrender. Others were trying to flee. A few were still fighting, but without coordination or support. Minister Jiwan Li contacted him from Earth. Admiral, the Council is demanding we stop the attacks. They're calling our actions war crimes. They're threatening sanctions. Admiral Rowe smiled without humor. Let them threaten. What will they do? Attack us? We just destroyed the second most powerful military in the galaxy in 6 months. Do they really want to try us? Tell the Council we'll stop when the Vethric surrender completely. Not before, and if they don't surrender, then we continue. We've prepared other weapons. Things we hope never to use. But if necessary, we'll use them all. The galaxy needs to learn this lesson. You don't attack humanity and survive. Not anymore. One of those other weapons was waiting in orbit around Jupiter. Scientists called it a relativistic kinetic weapon. Military people called it a planet cracker. It was simple in concept. Take an asteroid, accelerate it to near light speed, and aim it at a planet. The kinetic energy would be enough to crack continents, boil oceans, and end civilizations. Humanity had built 3 of them during the war. They'd never fired one. But the Vethric needed to know they existed. Admiral Rowe sent a message to the Vethric homeworld. It was short. This is Fleet Admiral Taeyun Ro of humanity. We have weapons aimed at your planet. These weapons can destroy worlds. We don't want to use them. We never wanted any of this. But you attacked us. You killed our people. You laughed at our peace. So here we are. You have 1 day to surrender completely. After that, we'll show you what extinction looks like. Choose wisely. The message included footage of the relativistic weapon test firing. An uninhabited moon in the Jupiter system simply ceased to exist when the projectile hit it. The impact energy was equivalent to thousands of nuclear weapons. The moon shattered into glowing debris that would drift through space forever. The Vethric leadership watched that footage. They argued among themselves. Some wanted to keep fighting. Others wanted to surrender. But mostly they were terrified. They'd thought they understood war. They'd thought they were superior warriors. But humans had shown them something beyond war. Humans had shown them annihilation. The surrender came 18 hours later, unconditional, complete, total. The Vethric Dominion agreed to every human demand. They would disarm. They would pay reparations. They would submit to human oversight. They would face justice for their crimes. And they would live with the knowledge that humanity could have erased them completely but chose not. Captain Ji-hoon Park stood on the bridge of the righteous fury and watched the Vethric fleet power down their weapons. It felt strange. For 6 months, he'd been fighting. Now it was over. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like something else. Something darker. Sir, are you all right? Lieutenant Hin asked. Ji-hoon looked at his young officer. I'm fine, Lieutenant. I'm just thinking about what we did. What we became? We won. But I wonder what we lost in the process. We survived, sir? That's what matters. Maybe or maybe survival isn't enough. Maybe how we survive matters too. Ji-hoon turned back to the viewport. But that's a question for philosophers. Right now, we have a galaxy to reorganize, and we need to make sure this never happens again. The war was over, but the consequences were just beginning. 1 year after the war ended, the Galactic Council met in a new chamber. The old crystal sphere above Nexora Prime had been damaged during the conflict. Not by weapons, but by simple neglect. When humanity withdrew, other species began questioning the Council's authority. Some left, others demanded reforms. The beautiful floating chamber fell into disrepair. The new meeting place was on a station in neutral space, built with human engineering and designed for function rather than beauty. Ambassador Minji Han walked through the corridors toward the main chamber. She'd been an ambassador before. Now she was something else. Humanity's representative to a council they no longer needed but chose to participate in anyway. The difference was important. Before, humanity joined because they wanted acceptance. Now, they participated because the galaxy needed them to. The chamber was different from the old one. Instead of species arranged by seniority, everyone sat in a circle. Equal positions. Equal voices. Mostly equal anyway. Humanity's section was slightly elevated, a subtle reminder of who held military supremacy now. Some species complained about that, but not loudly. Not anymore. The crystalline being who led the council approached Ambassador Han before the session began. Its light patterns showed something that might have been shame. Ambassador, I wanted to apologize personally. The council failed you. We failed all the species who looked to us for protection. We let fear of conflict blind us to reality. Minji Han looked at the being who told humanity to show patience while their people died. She could have been angry. Part of her was, but mostly she was tired. Your apology doesn't bring back the 40,000 people who died. It doesn't undo the war, but it's a start. The galaxy needs to change. That's why I'm here, to help build something better. The session began. The topic was military reform. Every species now had to maintain defensive forces. No more hiding behind the council while others did the fighting. No more assuming peace was permanent. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson, and humanity was making sure they didn't forget it. Captain Ji-hoon Park, now Admiral Park, presented the new military doctrine to the council. He'd been promoted after the war, given command of the peacekeeping fleet. It was strange standing before the same council that had ignored humanity's pleas. But he kept his voice professional. The human rules of engagement are now galactic standard, he explained. Every species must understand what war really means. Not honor duels or ritual combat. Real war, total war. We're providing training to all council militaries. We're teaching you what we learned from 10,000 years of fighting each other. A delegate from the Kalmar species, beings made of living crystal, raised a question. Admiral, your methods are effective, but they're also brutal. Must war be so terrible? Ji-hoon nodded slowly. Yes, war must be terrible. If it's not terrible, species will choose it too easily. The Vethric thought war was glorious. They thought it was about honor and proving strength. They were wrong. War is horror. It's death and suffering and loss. We make sure everyone understands that now. Not because we like it. Because if everyone understands how terrible war is, maybe they'll try harder to avoid it. The council voted to accept humanity's military reforms. Every species would now train in human tactics. Defensive positions would be strengthened. Supply lines would be hardened. Communication would be secured. The galaxy would never again be caught unprepared for an aggressive species like the Vethric, but military reform was only part of the changes. The Vethric Dominion no longer existed as an independent state. Their territory was under human administration now. Admiral Sangwoo Kang oversaw the reconstruction. It wasn't an occupation exactly. More like a forced evolution. The Vethric people still lived on their worlds. They still had their culture and society. But their government was being rebuilt under human supervision. The military leadership that had started the war faced trial. Some were executed. Others received life imprisonment. The Vethric population watched it happen. Many of them couldn't understand why humanity didn't simply kill them all. That's what the Vethric would have done. Minister Jiwan Lee explained it during a public broadcast. We're not trying to destroy the Vethric people. We're trying to teach them a different way. They believed might makes right. They believed the strong should dominate the weak. We're showing them that strength has responsibilities. The strong should protect the weak, not prey on them. It's a hard lesson, but they'll learn it. Dr. Yoonji Choi worked with Vethric scientists and scholars. She was helping them understand human history. They studied Earth's wars, the rise and fall of empires, the development of international law and human rights. The Vethric had never experienced anything like this. In their history, defeated species were enslaved or exterminated. Humanity was teaching them mercy. But it was mercy backed by overwhelming force. The Vethric knew that if they rebelled, if they returned to their old ways, humanity would finish what the war started. Commander Do-Yun Shin trained Vethric officers in modern warfare. It was strange teaching enemies how to fight, but the logic was simple. If the Vethric understood real military tactics, they'd understand why their old approach had failed so badly. They'd understand that glory and honor meant nothing against coordinated strategy and ruthless efficiency. Your people lost the war in the first week, Do-Yun told a class of former Vethric commanders. You just didn't know it yet? You thought like warriors. We thought like survivors. Warriors want glory. Survivors want to live. In war, survivors always win because they don't care about looking brave. They care about going home. The Vethric students listened. Some of them looked angry. Others looked thoughtful. All of them were learning. That was enough. Captain Nari Yoon's Special Forces units became the Council's rapid response teams. When aggressive species threatened others, Yoon's teams went in first. They didn't fight unless necessary. Usually their reputation was enough. Everyone knew about the Nightfall units now. The soldiers who moved like ghosts. The humans who appeared from nowhere, completed impossible missions, and vanished before anyone could respond. Most species backed down rather than face them. Colonel Sora Beek established the first cross-species marine training academy. She taught soldiers from a dozen different species how to board enemy vessels, clear hostile stations, and conduct operations in zero gravity. The training was brutal. Many students failed, but those who graduated were the best Marines in the galaxy. They learned from humanity's mistakes and successes. They learned that war wasn't about individuals. It was about teams working together toward a goal. Specialist Jun-Ho Nam worked with the Council's Information Security Division. He taught them about cyber warfare, digital defense, and the importance of secure communications. Most species had never considered that their computer systems could be weapons. Jun-Ho showed them how vulnerable they were. Then he showed them how to protect themselves. It was like teaching children about fire. Dangerous but necessary, Captain Yuna Jang became humanity's ambassador to the pilot community. She represented Earth at aerial combat competitions and flight shows. But she also gave lectures about the responsibility that came with dangerous weapons. I flew a fighter carrying an antimatter missile, she told audiences. I had the power to destroy a battle station with thousands of people aboard. That power terrified me. It should terrify everyone. We don't build these weapons because we like them. We build them because some species only understand force. But we hope never to use them again. The galaxy was changing in other ways too. Trade routes shifted. Human technology became valuable. Species that had looked down on humanity now sought partnerships. Everyone wanted access to human military doctrine, human weapons, human training. Some species were honest about it. Others tried to steal secrets. Humanity shared what they thought was safe and protected what wasn't. They'd learned the hard way that knowledge was power. Admiral Tae-Yun-ro gave fewer speeches now. He was old and tired. The war had aged him 20 years, but he still commanded respect. When he spoke, everyone listened. He gave one final address to the reformed Galactic Council before retiring. 103 years ago, humanity joined this council with hope. We wanted to be part of something larger than ourselves. We wanted to prove that intelligent species could cooperate peacefully. We tried for a century. We failed. Not because peace is impossible, but because peace requires everyone to choose it. The Vethric didn't choose peace, so we had to choose survival. He paused, looking at the assembled delegates. We showed you what humanity can do when threatened. We hope you never see it again. But don't mistake our hope for weakness. We're still the species that nearly destroyed itself a dozen times and survived. We're still the species that perfected war over 10,000 years. We're still dangerous. We're just choosing not to be. Choose wisely what kind of galaxy you want to build. Lieutenant Hin Kim, now promoted to captain, commanded his own ship. He remembered the young officer who'd been frustrated with humanity's peaceful approach. That seemed like a lifetime ago. He'd seen war now. Real war. Not the glorious adventure he'd imagined, but the brutal reality. He understood why humanity had tried peace for so long. War won territory and respect, but it cost something too. It cost innocence. Dr. Yunji Choi wrote a book about the war. Not a military history, but a cultural analysis. She explained how the conflict changed both humanity and the galaxy. We tried to leave our violent nature behind, she wrote. We tried to be better than our history. But the galaxy wouldn't let us. So we had to remember what we were. The tragedy isn't that we fought. The tragedy is that we had to fight. That peace wasn't enough. That kindness was mistaken for weakness. The galaxy forced us to be warriors again. And we were very, very good at it. Maybe too good? Her book became required reading at the Galactic Academy. Students studied it alongside military strategy texts. They needed to understand both aspects of humanity. The species that chose peace, and the species that chose survival when peace failed. Admiral Ji-hoon Park stood on the bridge of the Eternal Vigilance, his new flagship. It wasn't a warship exactly. More of a command vessel designed to coordinate peacekeeping operations. The name was deliberate. Eternal Vigilance. The price of peace. Humanity would never again assume the galaxy was safe. They would never again trust others to defend them. They would remain ready, always. For the day someone forgot the lessons of the Vethric War, a young ensign approached him with a report. She was new, born after the war started. To her generation, humanity's military power was normal. They didn't remember the peaceful century. They only knew the galaxy as it was now, with humanity as its military backbone. Sir, we're receiving a request from the Kelmor Confederation. They're having a border dispute with the Torval species. They want human mediators. Ji-hoon smiled slightly. Tell them we'll send diplomatic teams, but also tell them we're repositioning a battle group to the region, just in case. We mediate from a position of strength now. Yes, sir. Sir, can I ask a question? Of course. The ensign hesitated. Do you think the war was worth it? I mean, we won. We changed the galaxy. But so many people died. Was it worth the cost? Ji-hoon looked out at the stars. He thought about his sister, dead on New Jeju. He thought about the thousands of soldiers who died in the war. He thought about the Vethric civilians affected by the conflict. He thought about everything humanity had lost and gained. I don't know, he said honestly. We survived. We protected our people. We taught the galaxy important lessons. But we also became the thing we tried to move beyond. We became warriors again. Maybe that was necessary. Maybe it wasn't. History will judge us. All I know is we did what we thought was right. We tried peace. When that failed, we did what we had to do. That's all any of us can do. The ensign nodded and returned to her station. Ji-hoon remained at the viewport, watching the stars. Somewhere out there were species who still didn't understand. Species who might test humanity's resolve. Species who might need to learn the same lessons the Vethric learned. He hoped it wouldn't come to that. He hoped the galaxy had learned enough, but if they hadn't, humanity was ready. They would always be ready now. That was the price of survival. That was the burden of power. That was the lesson they'd taught the galaxy in blood and fire. Humanity tried peace. They gave it 103 years. They gave it their best effort. When peace failed, they showed the galaxy what they really were. Not peaceful philosophers, not naive idealists, but survivors. Ancient survivors who'd climbed from caves to stars on the backs of 10,000 generations who fought, struggled, and refused to die. The galaxy wanted to meet the other side of humanity. Now they knew what that meant. Now they understood. And in understanding, perhaps they would choose peace more carefully. Perhaps they would remember that humanity's greatest gift wasn't their military might. It was their choice to restrain it, to choose mercy when they could choose destruction. To build instead of burn, that choice was still available. It would always be available, but now everyone knew what happened if the choice was denied. Now everyone understood that humanity's peace was a gift, not a weakness. And gifts could be taken back. The galaxy was safer now. But it was a different kind of safety. Safety based on fear rather than trust. Safety maintained by strength rather than goodwill. It wasn't what humanity wanted, but it was what the galaxy created when it pushed humanity too far. Admiral Ji-hoon Park turned away from the viewport and walked to his command chair. There was work to do. A galaxy to protect. Peace to maintain. And always, the eternal vigilance required to ensure humanity never had to show its teeth again, but if they did, the galaxy would remember. They would always remember. That was the legacy of the HFY War. That was humanity's final message to the stars. We tried peace. You met the alternative. Choose wisely.